In a world at war, deception became a weapon, hidden in plain sight. A secret unit of artists, engineers, and soldiers turned the battlefield into a canvas. In early 1944, as Allied forces prepared for D-Day, a secret unit of artists and engineers was assembled in the heart of England. Their mission was unprecedented: to deceive the German army by creating phantom divisions, complete with inflatable tanks, fake artillery, and sound effects. The soldiers in this unit weren't only fighters, they were painters, set designers, and engineers, turning the art of war into a stage for illusion. To add realism, sound engineers recorded tanks rolling and cannons firing. These sounds were played through mobile speakers hidden in trucks and trees near the front lines. When German reconnaissance planes flew over, they would see columns of vehicles, hear the thunder of artillery, and believe a massive Allied force had positioned itself even though many of the tanks were merely rubber and canvas. The deception reached its peak during the Normandy invasion. Ghost army units positioned themselves miles away from the actual landing zones. Yet from above, German intelligence saw a seemingly impenetrable line of armored vehicles. The artistry of camouflage, perspective, and sound combined to make illusions indistinguishable from reality. A triumph of ingenuity over brute force. Despite the simplicity of their tools, paintbrushes, rubber, canvas, and recordings, the Ghost Army saved thousands of lives by misleading the enemy. General Patton himself later claimed that the illusions were so convincing they altered German troop movements. Art and strategy merged, proving that sometimes creativity could be mightier than sheer firepower. Sound engineers were tasked with one of the most unusual missions of the war. They carried heavy recording equipment into the fields, capturing the rumble of tanks, artillery fire, and troop movements. These sounds were then amplified through hidden speakers, often disguised as ordinary crates or camouflaged vehicles. Every note, every boom, was designed to convince the enemy of a force much larger than reality. Smoke generators were another critical tool. Thin plumes of artificial smoke were released near dummy tanks and fake artillery to mimic battlefield activity. From above, these smoke columns gave the impression of movement, firing, and strategic positioning. The combination of sound and smoke made even seasoned German reconnaissance officers second-guess their observations. The Ghost Army's ingenuity extended to lighting and perspective. Mirrors and angled canvases were used to create illusions of depth and mass. Inflatable tanks were arranged in precise formations to mimic the appearance of armored divisions. At sunset, shadows stretched across the fields, further convincing enemy reconnaissance of a massive force. The Ghost Army's inflatable tanks and artillery were more than props, they were a calculated weapon of psychological warfare. Each rubber vehicle was painted to match real units, with details like turret markings and camouflage patterns. Soldiers rehearsed movements and positioning to mimic the appearance of an entire armored division from aerial viewpoints. From a distance, these dummy divisions appeared formidable. German reconnaissance planes reported seeing endless rows of vehicles, reinforcing false intelligence about Allied strength. The strategic placement of the fakes caused German commanders to divert troops, protecting areas that weren't even under threat. The combination of perspective tricks and realistic props was critical. Mirrors reflected sunlight onto the fake tanks, making them look three-dimensional from high altitude. Camouflage nets added texture, while smoke machines simulated active firing. Every visual element contributed to a convincing battlefield illusion. By the time Allied forces landed in Normandy, the Ghost Army's illusions had already succeeded. Enemy forces were misdirected, and the real divisions faced less resistance. The artists and engineers had turned the battlefield into a canvas, where creativity directly saved lives. The Ghost Army's tactics weren't just about illusions, they were carefully coordinated maneuvers. Teams moved inflatable tanks in patterns that mimicked real divisions, and timing was critical to ensure reconnaissance planes captured the intended images. Every move was rehearsed to perfection, blending artistry with military precision. German intelligence consistently overestimated Allied forces because of these illusions. Reports indicated divisions in areas where no combat units existed. The combination of inflatable tanks, dummy artillery, and audio deception caused enemy commanders to divert resources, inadvertently easing pressure on actual landing zones. The Ghost Army also exploited natural terrain. Hills, forests, and rivers were incorporated into their deception plans, creating the illusion of strategic positioning. From aerial reconnaissance, shadows and shapes aligned perfectly to suggest heavily fortified positions, though only a fraction of the equipment was real. These meticulously crafted illusions directly impacted the success of the Normandy landings. By misleading German forces, the Ghost Army minimized casualties and allowed real units to establish footholds more easily. Creativity, precision, and teamwork proved to be as lethal as conventional weaponry. The Ghost Army's artists used every tool at their disposal to create realistic camouflage. Canvas covers, paint, and natural foliage were carefully applied to both real and inflatable vehicles. The goal was to break up outlines and shadows so that, from the air, German reconnaissance would see a seamless, impenetrable formation. Deep within a German command bunker, the reports arrived just as the Ghost Army intended. Reconnaissance officers confirmed what appeared to be a massive Allied armored division assembling near the river. Maps were redrawn. Troop deployments were altered. Entire brigades were ordered to move to defend an attack that would never come. In the dim light of the underground war room, shadows flickered over maps pinned to the walls. Cigarette smoke curled through the stale air as officers debated strategy, their voices sharp with urgency. Every decision, every movement, every line on the map based on an illusion. The Ghost Army's masterpiece was complete, a deception so perfect it shaped the enemy's reality. At dawn, the German armored columns rumbled to life. Engines growled and treads clattered over frozen mud as thousands of men moved toward what they believed was the Allied front. In the distance, smoke from the Ghost Army's machines curled into the pale morning sky, a perfect illusion of conflict. From the air, the formation looked formidable. From the ground, it was determination wrapped in uncertainty. They were marching toward shadows, an army chasing ghosts. Every turn of the tank's tread brought them closer to an empty battlefield, a symphony of deception echoing through the fog of war. The German column came to a slow halt. Engines idled, the sound fading into the cold morning air. Before them lay not an army, but a graveyard of rubber and canvas. Deflated tanks, painted barrels, broken frames fluttering in the breeze. Officers dismounted, walking cautiously among the remnants. Boots crunched over mud and fabric. One soldier kicked a hollow tank hull. It folded in on itself with a hiss. Confusion rippled through the ranks, whispers, disbelief, then silence. The truth hung in the air heavier than any explosion. They had been fighting ghosts. From miles away, hidden behind the tree line, the artists of the Ghost Army watched in silence. They had won their battle without firing a single shot. Dawn settled gently over the silent fields. The Ghost Army began to move not with fanfare, but with practiced silence. Tents were folded, inflatable tanks were deflated and packed into trucks, and camouflage nets were rolled like forgotten theater curtains. The wind carried only the faint rustle of canvas and the soft clinking of tools. No war cries, no engines roaring in victory, just quiet hands erasing the illusion they had built. From the ridgeline, a few soldiers paused to watch the empty battlefield one last time. The fake artillery, the smoke-stained mannequins, the hollow tanks all remained like ghosts at dawn. One of the artists, paint still dried on his sleeves, whispered, "No one will know we were here." Another replied softly, "But they'll know what we did." As their convoy disappeared into the morning mist, only silence remained, a silence that had saved lives. They fought with silence instead of bullets, with paint instead of steel. While others charged into battle, they built illusions in the shadows. Illusions strong enough to move armies and save lives. Their names were hidden, their victories unspoken. No medals, no monuments, only empty fields where rubber tanks once stood, and a war forever changed by imagination. This was the Ghost Army. Artists, engineers, dreamers in uniform. They left no graves behind, only stories carried by the wind. And though history nearly forgot them, their deception became one of its greatest truths.